it kind of makes an activist out of you when 3 helicopters land in your backyard and guys jump out with guns and destroy your place before your very eyes, all over a net full of plants. Felony agriculture. I had the opportunity in the autumn of 1991 to file a local ballot initiative in Santa Cruz County about medical marijuana. I'd used it since the early 80s for seizure disorder. After a head injury in a skiing accident in Lake Tahoe. In 1991, the federally funded camp helicopters landed in my backyard and took my marijuana plants. I figured I was going to be needing a lawyer, so I called my old friend Dennis Perone in San Francisco, who'd been the Prince of Pot for the gay community for many years and had done a local San Francisco County medical marijuana initiative that autumn. It was on the ballot when I called him.
Dennis in '91, when I was in jail, I had worked on the petition for Dennis's very first, it was Measure P, to legalize marijuana or make it lowest possible priority in San Francisco. That was '91. And then Scott in Santa Cruz at the time was doing medical marijuana Measure A in Santa Cruz, which also passed that in '92. And because they were busting AIDS patients for pot in Marin County at the time, I got pretty upset, and I was going to do an initiative in Marin County to make them knock it off. And I contacted my supervisor and said, "What do you think about this?" His name is Gary Giacomini, a very wonderful, respected man. And I said, "Lynette, you don't even do an initiative. Well, just pass this. Go to the Board of Supervisors. This is a no-brainer for Marin County. There's a bunch of old hippies here. They don't want to see AIDS patients going to jail." I said, "Really? You can just pass a law at the Board of Supervisors like this?" He said, "Well, it's not really a law. It's the lowest possible priority for enforcement and prosecution against patients who are using marijuana for medical purposes." So in 1992, we passed the Law of Shaw in Marin County, ordinance number 3109, which was the first ordinance that was passed by political vote without an initiative to do something about medical marijuana, to downsize the criminality of marijuana when it comes to medical purposes. So they used this technique in several other areas in California after I discovered this was, a really nice way to go. It was cheap too. And he also learned how to work with politics. I had the only license to sell marijuana for 10 years in California. It was actually zoned and permitted through the municipal law process, through the planning commission process.
No one had to go to prison. That was always my goal, that we would be able to do this and do it in a way that would prevent that outcome. Even if we did end up in federal court, we believed what we were doing was a necessity, that there was no other option for the patients that we worked with but to use medical marijuana. There was no other safe option for them to obtain medical marijuana than to band together under the provisions of Proposition 215 and grow it for themselves.
I'm the lucky recipient of a lawsuit by Bill Clinton and Janet Reno, and they dragged me to court 43 times over 12 years, maybe more. I spent every penny that we could muster up. I can't, it's just, 50 grand a year in legal fees sometimes, to fight the case, because it was a technique that they were trying to shut down. The 3 clubs closed instantly. As soon as the feds sued them, they said, we're out. It was very intimidating to have the federal government drag you into court in front of this huge thing when all the major media and the marshals with their big guns and badges and dozens of them and everybody going crazy. And me, a few of my friends. And it went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And I had agents assigned to me, starting from the Clinton administration, that followed me everywhere for 12 years.
Because if you're going to manufacture marijuana in America, you have to have a license to do so from the DEA. And cannabis is even on their little checklist of boxes. You know, you can check the cannabis box if that's what you're going to be manufacturing. So we're committed to exploring every legal option for resolving our problem, so that we could maintain a claim of necessity. Because we applied for a DEA license to manufacture, they wouldn't give us one. You know, part of the doctrine of necessity says you have to have exhausted all other legal means to solve your problem. So every time we became aware of some legal means for solving the problem, whether it was a government program or a research project or a license that you need to have, we would file for that. We wanted to engage with the bureaucracy at all levels, because that was the only way we were going to get a true solution to the problem, get it in the hospital pharmacy, was if that bureaucratic mechanism was activated somehow. And so we used these various, you know, we applied to be a 501c3 nonprofit foundation. And you know, 8 years after we started that process, the last thing Bill Clinton did before he left office, probably the same day he was signing Rogers' annulment of his cocaine conviction, or whatever they call it, he signed the final revocation of our nonprofit status on January 17th, you know, 3 days before he handed things over to George Bush. And so we tried everything to engage constructively with the government. And on October 25th, like I said, 6 weeks after 9/11, I guess they didn't have anything better to do. The DEA came. They were in our place for about 6 hours. It took them 6 hours to undo what had taken us 6 years to put in place. They kind of corralled us all into the sitting area of the club and dismantled everything. We heard from reliable sources inside the government that the decision to bust us came from the person right underneath Ashcroft. The number 2 guy at Justice made the decision that we should be closed. And once that decision had been issued, no matter how well the local DEA agents believed we were doing our job, and I think they believed we were doing it well, they're even on record as saying that in court, they were under orders from Washington to close us. So we were closed.
My name is Julie Falco. I'm 45 years old, and I live here in Chicago, Illinois. And I've been living with multiple sclerosis, call that my profession, living and trying to maintain that, and as a medical cannabis advocate for the last 6 years during that time. In the beginning, talking about it, that was the thing of like, oh, do I say my full name? Well, you know, like, do I really tell people that I'm doing this and how to bake in it and everything? They're like, okay, right, I got to be concerned here of what I'm actually talking about. And you know, do I say I'm Julie F. or, you know, Julie Anonymous? You know, give myself a different title. And then right before, you know, there was a couple interviews that I was going to give my name out or not. That's when I heard about Jonathan Magby in Washington, in that story that he had gotten arrested. He was paraplegic and could only use, you know, the chin-operated device to get around in his wheelchair. And he said to the judge, you know, I use this because it makes me feel better. And because he said that, this woman judge put him in jail for like 10 days. But since he was so, you know, he couldn't move anything, and he you know, he needed respiratory help. He, like in the evenings, he had to get put on different oxygen, he had to get respiratory help, he needed nurse care. They put him in a jail cell without the treatment or the care he needed. Subsequently, he died in prison. They left him because he couldn't, you know, I guess he kept ringing the, you know, or trying to bang on the jail bars, and I think they moved to another cell that was farther away because there was no button or nothing that he could pop, you know, he couldn't even lift his hand to do that. And so when they found him, of course, he was soaked in his own urine because he had no care, nobody to here he is in jail. And I thought this was insane, because I'm like reading the story going, shoot, I think I got it bad. I got my legs, and I got my hands, and I got my voice. This could be me. But it's like, here's somebody that, is in a wheelchair and doesn't have that support he needed, and they threw him away like a piece of trash. So I said, screw that. I'm Julie Falco, and I use Campus, and it makes me feel better.